Hi everyone, this is Sarah B. Hansen, and I am all excited here today to teach you this very loose, colorful, let's call it color therapy session here today. A lot of negative painting, some wet washes, some splashing, a little bit of salt, yes, and some beautiful colors. So, are you ready? All right, let's do it. All right, so to begin to paint these flowers, what you want to do is have a really light outline of some flower petals and some grasses and leaves, very loose or tight, up to you. And then just, draw it in lightly with a pencil, and then give yourself a little bit of a border of a rectangle in there as a guideline for your tape. Because then you will take your blue tape, it's like a low tack, low adhesive type tape, and you want to tape this off so you get a nice white border around your flowers, and that's going to look really nice and really sharp after you paint it. Take your fingernail and kind of go around the edge so there's no leakies. All right, taking some incredible white mask, liquid frisket, and a little plastic tool or an old brush. You don't want to use a new brush because it will ruin those brushes. Dab a little bit of this liquid mask on the tip of a brush, and just put a little dots in here where the pistil and stamens might be. Okay, once you've dried your liquid mask, so next step is to grab a nice big fat wash brush and lay in a wet, completely wet background. The goal here being to wet your paper completely so that the paint is able to travel in all areas. This gives us some nice, beautiful, soft edges. Let's do the big brush here. So I'm thinking about leaving these areas kind of white. So I'm not going to go into those, and I'm going to leave those flowers so they've got a little bit of a white flower there. I've got quinacridone coral, and I've got transparent yellow that I'm pulling from in the puddles over here. I'm going to go around my flowers with a nice pretty pink color, dipping in. We'll get a little bit darker here. And some mixing in some yellow into these areas. Remember, your paper's still white, so you want that paper to be nice and beautifully white. And pull over here, there's a little bit of opera. It's a gorgeous color. So go ahead and grab that as well. Leaving those flowers mostly white right now. So we've got a nice mixture of light and dark going on in there. And then with my smaller brush, I'm gonna grab some Antwerp and mix it with the yellow and just drop it in a couple of areas here where I think I need a little bit of a darker contrast. We'll dance those along the edge here. And you're just dropping it in. You're not stirring, you're not going crazy on it. Dropping it in and letting it kind of do its own thing. And then in the center of these, I'm gonna go ahead and grab just a little bit of what might be a center, of the flower, like the pollen area. Okay, so we're gonna let this dry right now. Actually, you know what I think I'll do for funsies? Let's do just a little bit of salt. I always love salt. So we're gonna sprinkle a little bit of salt on this, on the whole painting. Again, put it in your hand and sprinkle it around. You're just adding some texture. And then we're gonna allow this to dry. Okay, once you've totally dried your painting, I'm going to just go across the top of it with your hand and get rid of some of the salt, all the salt if you can. The painting should be totally dry. Don't worry about the liquid mask that you put in there. That's going to stay on for now. And if your painting's dry, it will be not cool to the touch. So you'll see that right away. You can feel it. If it feels cold, then it's probably still a little bit wet. You want to go ahead and let that dry a little bit more. So what's fun now, if you can still hopefully see your pencil lines in here, is to come in and begin to find the flowers by painting behind them. And so you can use any color you want to use, but try to keep with the colors that you already have. So you begin by going around some of these flowers and the little background edges, and you're just going to paint right behind those flowers. Keep your edges nice and soft with all of your colors. By as soon as you lay your paint in, you come back behind it and make sure that you have, you're spreading that paint out. So you see how there's no hard edges in there? So I'm moving pretty quickly, and this is quinacridone coral that I'm using here. So I'm moving fairly quickly behind these flowers and behind the petals, and coming right up into the next flower, so that it all feels like it's connected. And again, this is quinacridone red. You can choose any color you want to, but try to keep those edges nice and soft. That's kind of the key. Transparent colors work the best, I have to say. So if you're trying to use like a cerulean or something like that, it might not work great because it's going to be a little bit more opaque and probably not really look exactly what you want it to look like. So I'm using, because it's going to be opaque and it's going to kind of cover the other paintings up, right? And I don't think that's quite what we want. We want to see that nice glow, that transparent look to it as you're painting. You can see the colors behind it, behind the other colors. So you begin to just work around the flowers and fill them all in. This is a little bit of opera here, and that's going to make this petal stand out. And this is kind of abstract. I'm not being incredibly picky about trying to be exactly correct, anatomically correct, or whatever you want to call it. This is just a loose, fun painting that doesn't have a lot of, you don't have to worry about trying to be perfect here, okay? We're not about perfect. Perfect is boring. And you want your personality come through in these and really feel a sense of joy in painting these flowers. There's a little edge up here. I'm going to go around. I'm going to kind of continue to paint these flowers and find the petals. So keep working on that. All right, and then if it feels like you've kind of covered up some leaves and you can't quite see your leaves or stems or other flowers, then once your painting's dry again, go ahead and come in and maybe draw some more flowers behind, or whatever you feel like you want back here. Stems, leaves, anything. You're giving yourself a little bit more structure behind the flowers. So we're going to go ahead and go in and draw more things behind the flowers, okay? All right, now that I have more petals, more limbs, more leaves, I'm gonna, sorry, my chair is so squeaky. That's not my bones, I promise, it's my chair. So I'm gonna come in behind here and find still yet again more negative spaces. So I'm painting behind those little petals, coming right up to, joining right up to where the next shape starts, and filling in all of these little shapes so that we begin to feel like we have a background in here. And you can take your time doing this and see if you can find some little petals and shapes and stems and leaves and things like that, and just paint all those shapes behind your petals. And you can continue to use the same colors you have used before, or change your colors up a little bit. I really like to stick with basically the same colors I've used. This is I need to get some more of that on here. Quinacridone coral that I'm using for the most part in the background. I will come in later and use Antwerp to get some dark in here. But for now, this red feels like it's doing it for me. It feels pretty good. So just painting all of these shapes behind these flowers to give us a nice feel that maybe there's other things going on behind these flowers. So what happens is the white flowers will begin to pop out even more from the background. So really, really fun to watch this begin to come alive. So again, you're painting behind the leaves. You're not painting the leaves themselves or the petals, whatever they may be. So work on that. All right. So I've gone in and I've gone around some of these other stems and I've dried it again. So each time you go back into these places, if they're wet, you need to dry them in between. So I'm getting my brush wet and damp again, and I'm gonna go ahead and find a few more things. I like this flower in here, this little small flower, and it's not popping out too much. So I'm gonna go ahead and find that shape and see, because we're using transparent colors, it just keeps showing up in here. The next layer, you can see through the layers before that you've already applied. So you're covering up, but you're also looking down into that next layer. It feels really cool as you continue to do this. So now see, just by painting around that flower shape, you can see it looked kind of dark before, but now it's lighter, it's popped out. And still, this is the lightest, where we left the whites. So finding this shape again, and I'm using the same color over and over again. I was going to use some Antwerp, and I may later, but I'm really feeling the red gold vibe here. So we're going to go ahead and just keep that going. And good grief, you could probably sit and paint on this for days and days and days and never really be done, because maybe you would be done eventually, but seriously, it's so addictive and so much fun to do. And what we want to do is we want to find the center of those flowers just a little bit more. So I'm dampening my brush, getting it wet, dampening off on the sponge, and then with my brush pointed, watch out because I've got some wet paint here, pointed toward the bottom of that hard edge. I'm just going to grab the center of those flowers and then soften the top so it comes up nice and just kind of suggestive there. Here's the other center of this flower. Bring it up. And then maybe a touch of yellow in there would be nice, because we've got some pollen and some, speckly stuff going on in here. A little touch of yellow. Okay, and then one thing that you may have noticed I did during a little dry break here is I splattered. So I'm going to just go ahead and give it another little splatter, this time of red, and maybe just a touch of yellow. Okay, so I could keep fiddling with this and doing more and more, and I might, but let's go ahead and I'll show you the next step. So I dried this completely. You want to make sure it's very, very, very dry. No wet paint anywhere, and you can take a rubber mask remover anyway, or you can just use your fingers and basically go across the top of the paint, the paper, and you see all those little flecks, those little splatters now that are white. It just liven up the painting and make it feel like I said before, maybe pollen, maybe bugs, maybe little spores. And then very carefully go ahead and take the tape off of the edges of your painting, and you want to, when you remove the tape, you want to pull it away from the paint, so you're pulling towards the outside. All right, well, there's so much to love about this. I feel like we accomplished our color therapy for sure. I'm happier now after I painted some red colors. Red and yellow. I mean, this is bright and cheerful. I hope you enjoyed this session. Take care of each other. Take care of yourself. Have joy, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.